precision, watch investors collide.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fundraising, a podcast where we interview top early stage investors and ask them all the questions that you, as a first time fundraising founder, want to know about the fundraising process. And today, I have Iron Mike himself from Context VC, who I think is going to be maybe more authentic than perhaps some of the other VCs that we have on this platform. So I'm super excited to have him on here. Mike, give me a quick introduction of yourself and Context VC.
Yeah, well, Matt, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. Like Matt said, my name is Iron Mike Steadman. I have the privilege of being a venture partner at Context VC, where we invest pre-seed in the early stage founders. Industry agnostic, our average check size is between 250K and 500K. We have a strong portfolio of military veterans, but we invest across the board. What we look for are called X-Man, so exceptional entrepreneurs that are building, and we try to get to them early because we know how hard it is to go from 0 to 1, but we're not afraid.
I love that. All right, we're going to break this up into a few different parts. The first is a little bit more about you. A lot of these questions were questions that founders submitted, and then we kind of floated the top ones up to the top to ask here. One of the most common ones was more about why you chose to get into VC and maybe what you were doing right before you got into VC.
So for me, I've always thought of myself more as an operator. I have a military background, had opportunity to go to United States Naval Academy, where I got really good at the sport of boxing. By the time I graduated, I was a 3-time national boxing champ, 2-time most valuable boxer, and captained my boxing team. And after I graduated, served as a Marine infantry officer, went to Afghanistan, Japan, and the Philippines. And I set context for this because, no pun intended, but when I was transitioning out of the military, I didn't want to do entrepreneurship. I just wanted to start a boxing gym. Right. And so I didn't go to pursue an MBA or anything. I moved to Newark, New Jersey, started my first boxing gym, and that entered me into entrepreneurship. And basically, I just start, bootstrapping businesses to pay the bills because there's no money in boxing, let alone amateur boxing, let alone free amateur boxing for inner city youth in Newark. And over the years, just been a very prolific reader and tinkerer and whatnot. And one thing that I'm sure, Matt, you've learned as well is the importance of taking small bets. And so over the years, I've gotten really good at kind of building a robust network, bootstrapping these little niche profitable businesses, and my confidence has grown throughout that process. And I just see so many entrepreneurs focusing on the wrong things. And it got to the point to where I wanted to kind of be an EIR at a university to help mentor other entrepreneurs. But there's a West Point grad by the name of Tim Shaw who started Context VC, and he hosts a military veteran startup conference every year. Him and I built some rapport with each other. And I said, you know what? I was like, I wonder if I could be an EIR with Context. And for the record, I didn't even really know what EIR meant. I just assumed you mentored founders. I reached out to Tim. We jumped on a call, and then he actually brought me on as a venture partner because for a lot of venture firms, EIRs are looking to spin out ventures themselves. You kind of incubate on something internally, and then you got to spin it out, and typically that firm will back it. But for what I was more interested in was just getting my hands on as many startup founders as possible, as many portfolio companies as possible. And then through that process, it's exposed me to the other side of the table of venture, which has been super enlightening for me. And so I say that to say I think of myself as like an operator, and I've been able to be blessed to see the other side of the table. And I'm hoping during our conversation, I can share some more kind of tactical, kind of lessons learned I'm seeing because, up until recently, and even still, I feel like an underdog and a bit of a misfit because I don't have that kind of polished, finance background and yada, yada, yada. But I do know what it's like to take things from 0 to 1. And I'm getting firsthand experience working with a pre-seed fund, seeing how founders get funded.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. One of the other common questions, you hinted at maybe a couple of them here. What is your favorite part about the job and being a VC? And then also, what is your least favorite part about the job?
I think for me, it's been helping continue entrepreneurship forward. So I'm a category designer, and we like to talk about missionaries and mercenaries. Mercenaries, all they care about is money. Missionaries care about impact. Entrepreneurship is like a core aspect of the American dream. And being around founders who are able to raise, because that's a big lift for like 99% of entrepreneurs, just to be honest. We ain't even got to customers yet, but like getting capital, right, is it's a big lift. And now it's been normalized for me, you know, because I've gotten to see it over and over at the highest level. When you're around founders that are able to raise those pre-seed rounds, then raise that seed, and then go on, to get that Series A and above, it's like, okay, now the realm of possibilities. So I definitely think like it's helped me maintain an abundance mindset. Like if you follow me on social media, I always say it's a great day to be alive,
I love that.
because I think, especially with all the changes in AI and stuff, like there's just so much disruption going on. It's real quick to find yourself in a glass half empty kind of mood. But I promise you, people are getting funded, people are building. I've seen it, and so it's out there. You just got to make sure that you're focusing on the right things.
Yeah, I love that. And least favorite part about the job.
Oh, that's the least favorite. Passing up on so many opportunities, you
Uh-huh.
know, like there's great founders across the board, and full transparency, right? Like, we have a team, right? And we have one GP and he makes all the final investment decisions. But sometimes I'm like, I would invest in this, I would invest in that, I would invest in this, So turning founders away probably sucks, to be honest. And people that are like, they're super passionate, they're hungry, but I know it's just not a good fit for us. And I also don't want to waste, our GP's time as well. And so that's probably hard.
Yeah, I think founders take it too personally sometimes where they think that it's a reflection on them not being good enough, when a lot of times it's not a right fit for the fund or the timing, or there's so many variables that go into it.
Yeah.
The next question that we have here are, what are some of the things that you wish founders, now that you've gone from operator to VC, you have kind of a peek behind the curtain. What are some of those things that maybe as an operator you didn't necessarily appreciate? Now that you're a VC, you can be like, oh, so that's how that works. I have an appreciation for maybe the VC game a little bit more now. What are some of those insights that you maybe got from flipping into a VC?
So here's what I've learned. Okay. And I already knew this from my work on category and stuff, et
Mm.
cetera. But it's super important for those of you that are interested in raising capital. If you're raising venture capital, you're really building two products. One product is a company and business model that you have to sell to investors. And the other one is the product that you have to sell to end users. Okay. Those are two different languages. And those are also two different lines of effort. I was on with a founder early because what I have found is that the successful founders that I have seen, right, they make a decision that they're going to raise that pre-seed. And that pre-seed is going to be their number one priority. And they treat it like a movement to contact in the military, which means that like you can't build any business in the world talking to 1 to 2 customers a week. Probably not going to raise around talking to 1 to 2 VCs a week either. Okay. So understanding like the sequencing, right? So like if you can get away and build a product, bootstrapping and get some traction that way, and then get VC to kind of get there faster, that's one thing. But if you need VC to build the product, right? And that becomes the main effort, like the main friction point. It's like you can't even do your thing if you can't raise the capital. Then you need to treat that and prioritize it like it deserves. And like what successful founders are doing. I mean, this is super enlightening for me as like an underdog and a misfit, right? Like number one, like having a end goal in mind of when you want to close your round by, even if it seems like pie in the sky, but it's important, I think, for founders to focus so they know that, like, hey, I want to close this round by this date, and I'm going to give it everything I got in order to make that happen, right? And I think the decision choice with that alone is just going to free up your clarity because it's hard when you're doing 10,000 things while trying to raise capital, talking to 1 to 2 investors a week. Probably not going to happen, right? So I would like literally put a timeline around that thing. I think the other thing I would also think about is being prepared for success, acting as if. So, like, let's say you do get on with the VC who's interested and he says, send me your data room, send me your stuff. Like, that's not the time to be scrambling right then and there, you know? So, you need to have that stuff kind of set up and ready to go. Now, one thing Tim, the GP at Context, likes to say, he's like to say, we invest in friends, family, and fools, right? No pitch deck, no product, no revenue. Now, we don't like to be fools, right? There's certain founders that can get away with that. Some of us mere mortals, we need the basics. We need the pitch decks. We need the stuff. And so just making sure that like you have those things. And then the other thing I will say too is make sure you know who you're talking to. So I
Yeah.
think one of the challenges now is like people are just like, oh, I need VC. Did you even look at the firm? Why is this a good fit? Right? Like they invest Series A and you're looking for, pre-seed, right? So you're wasting their time now. So just being intentional. And I think if you go back to just the basics, it's just like, you know, who's your perfect customer as a startup founder? Who's your ideal VC? Who do you want on your cap table and why, right? You need to be very intentional about that. And for us, I will say, which was like super enlightening for me was, and I should have known this from a sales perspective. If your number one goal is to raise venture capital, and you get a GP in front of you, the person that can make the investment decision, and he's on the call with you. That is the most important meeting in the world. Whatever you got after that, cancel it. The other thing is be prepared to potentially receive an offer on that call, depending on who you're on the phone with. And that means you need to be able to do live negotiation right then. Not, oh, I'm going to send an email and I'm going to, because all that stuff solves momentum. This was super enlightening for me, because you can get caught off guard by that kind of stuff. But just understand, I think what's happening now is like time is just such a finite resource
Yeah.
that particularly like the higher up in the food chain you get, right? They just don't have as much time. And so when you are in front of them, like you're the most important thing in the world, and just make sure you're making most of that time you have right then and there. Not like following up emails and yada, yada, yada. It's like that could be the negotiation. I've seen it,
Absolutely.
witnessed it. The other
Yeah.
thing I've witnessed is and I asked this at our military veteran startup conference. I think when you feel like you're got a chip on your shoulder and you believe that you're not good at something, like you're not good at sales or you're not good at fundraising, rather than going through the reps to get good, you want to outsource it to someone else who's going to make it easier. And there's a lot of, I talked about missionaries and mercenaries, a lot of mercenaries out there, brokers that are want to take a big chunk of your
Oh man, it's a
raise.
huge
And
mistake.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just so many red flags out there. And so just be on the lookout for that. So let me sum up. Number one, act as if, right? Have a timeline and close for your ways. I mean, I was blown away. People were jumping out the internet that I've never met before. And you're like, we want to raise on Friday. We want to close by Friday. You're like, we don't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
The fact but some of them going to be successful. So having that, mentally making the decision of what the main thing is. If you need to raise, you raise. If you need to get customers, get customers. Whatever is the number one goal, set that priority and get it across the line. And then like be prepared to negotiate on these calls. Like this is the arena. This is sparring, you know, and just be prepared for success.
I love that. That was a great overview of a lot of things that we're going to cover too with some of these questions when we go into the fundraising process. But I love hearing it from a perspective of an operator, again, turned VC, to be able to give that high level look. We're going to go into the rapid fire round version of this, where we essentially ask specific questions, usually like a minute or so responses on very specific aspects of the fundraising process from a VC. We break it into 3 sections. The first is getting in the room. How does somebody actually get their pitch deck or get their idea in front of a VC to begin with? 2 is how do they crush that initial meeting once they do get it and make a good impression that allows them to continue the fundraising process? And then 3, we're going to go into the fundraising process, the meat of it. How do you get it over the finish line, the diligence process, and go from there? So you ready? Ready for some
I'm ready.
rapid
Let's go.
fire? Here we go. All right, getting into the room. When founders are, you mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but specifically when founders are creating that list of VCs, usually they have a list of 20, 50, 100 VCs that they kind of make. It's like their checklist, their CRM. What is some advice that you would give founders in making that list? What are some characteristics or things on these funds that they should really index on when making that initial list of VCs they want to reach out to?
All right. I'm going to give y'all a disclaimer here. Nothing I say here, it means I'm right. This is my
Yeah,
bias and my opinion. So feel
I
free to
love it.
tell me to kick rocks. Number
Yep.
one, I would stack every unfair advantage first. So let's say I went to a specific university. I would know everyone at that university that's working in VC and stuff, etc. Because that gives me a low hanging, easy fruit kind of touch point. So I would compile lists based off of that. Where do I already have a zone of influence, right? If you're military, right, maybe it's that background. And so you shake the tree of all military investors or adjacent because they might know someone, I think that's low hanging fruit. I would also think about like the funds that fit the vertical I'm interested in. So if like I'm trying to raise for a CPG brand, right? I need to know all the VCs at the pre-seed level that invest in CPG. Same thing for alcohol, same thing for AI or hard tech or whatever. Like you really need to know your category. You need to know who the players are. And then I would prioritize off of that.
I love that. Yeah. And then, I mean, building up a list that's hyper focused is just going to make your fundraising process that much better. So, definitely worthwhile putting in the effort early. When you look at a pitch deck, a lot of times a pitch deck is kind of like it's the window into the company. It's the one thing as VCs we can get a really good high level pitch or view without meeting first. What I find is that a lot of investors have a particular slide or a stat or something that they look for first before they dive deeper into the whole pitch deck itself. Do you have that slide in your mind? What is the most important slide or thing that you look for in some of these cold outreaches that you might get, or even somebody throws it your way as an introduction? What are you looking for first before you dive deeper?
I'm going to tell you at the pre-seed level, we know it's a crapshoot. So what are we looking for? We're looking for who is the individual we're looking to get behind, which goes
Yeah,
back again to the X-Man. I think what a lot of y'all don't realize too is your LinkedIn profile, right, is like a landing page these
it's
days
so true.
because it
Yeah,
tells a story. It tells a story, you know? So I'm first, who is this person? What is the market that they're going after? Why are they the ones to go after this market? We ain't even got to the pitch deck yet, you know? And the reality of it is the pitch deck gives us just a quick snapshot, right? And I think that's one thing that's hurting entrepreneurship, to be honest. I think there's just been so much like, I don't know, Shark Tanky, all the stuff that makes people think that's real life. That's not real life, right? Like people want to get to know the people that they're willing to invest in, at least through a conversation. And I think what I've been seeing too is like, even with the pitch decks, is like founders are like, if I could just get through the pitch deck, we're talking right now. Yeah, but what about the pitch deck? Yeah, the pitch deck is good, right? It's a good enabler, but like you need to be able to talk about what it is you're building and why. And you need to know the questions and have the answers with a conviction, And if you don't know the answers, right, like what's your path to validating sooner rather than later, right? So it's more about like why you? Why are you the one to solve this problem? Have you thought about this problem in the correct way? You know, do you know your category? Who are the other players? There's so much that goes into it. But like I would say, like, as much as you're focused on the pitch deck, if you're at the pre-seed level, I'm just gonna say the pre-seed, and you don't come from deep pockets. Okay. The biggest thing
just
is
most people. Yeah,
which is like 99% of us, what's the signal that you're giving? Have you built multiple products in this vertical, bootstrapping, whatever, right? Like what there needs to be a story. And I'm telling you, your LinkedIn will tell a story, and then your pitch deck needs to align with that story.
that's great. That's great advice. Yeah, and it is weird because I get a lot of feedback on like really LinkedIn. Like you guys are old looking at LinkedIn, but it's the only place we can really go to see the story, to your point, where it's, everything from where you went to school, what you studied, what you did, it's all there. And then unfortunately it's the shortcut that a lot of VCs will use. In a similar vein, what is a right way or a good way that you've seen founders get their pitch deck in front of investors like you? Cold email, introduction. What are some of the best ways that you think founders can go about getting into the inbox even, or at least having it being opened for these VCs?
I'm going to tell you right now, you got to understand the VC business model, right? So what are their priorities, right? Where do they get deal flow from and stuff, et cetera? At Context, we just hosted the Military Veteran Startup Conference. Okay. We had over 400 some founders attend that event, right? What do you think we're prioritizing? What list do you think we're prioritizing of startup founders? Probably the ones that went to that event. Because again, it's important, right? Because we use community building to source the best founders, right? And if you're a founder and you're prioritizing like one of our events, right? Like, what does that probably signal? You know? So like that stuff matters. I definitely think, especially now in like the age of AI and just like fake internet people, like I think the closer you can get to your target demographic in real life from an investment perspective, I think that's another unfair competitive advantage. Going to an event, shaking hands, kissing babies, right? Having a really tight one liner about what you're doing for whom, right? That lives rent free in people's head. That way, when you follow up, you're memorable, So like all that like interpersonal practicing that stuff, I think that stuff's super important because it's all about like, I think too, what I'm seeing is everybody wants to solve for alpha like at the same time. I want to pitch the VC. I want them to understand my tech. I want them to understand all these things. I want to write the check. Da, da, da. It's a process. Step one is like, are you interested and memorable enough to get the meeting? To get interest, right? Then you get the interest, and then you can go to the fundable business model, yada yada. Then you can get into the tech stuff, and you see this really with super technical founders. They want to lead with all the technical stuff first, but like the first is like it's all story. What's the story you're telling? Why am I interested in? Why am I backing you? Now we can get to the next phase, and then we can get to the
Yeah.
next phase. So just
Yeah.
understanding that there's a sequence in, but I would definitely understand the business model of the VCs, where they're spending their time, and seeing if you can spend your time to get there as well.
Yeah, I like that. You hinted at, sometimes a mistake that these founders make is to lead too technical. Are there other mistakes that you see founders make in like this initial cold outreach phase that they should avoid? Like whether they're getting feedback from it from somewhere else, but you see it often enough to where you're like, just don't do that. That's not the right way of getting in front of a VC.
Yeah, I think the hard part is, it goes back to volume, right? One thing I wrote while you were talking is TOFU, which stands for top of funnel. And we have a saying at the context, top of funnel is protein. Okay. A lot of times I'll ask a founder, how many VCs have you talked to? Or how many funds have you talked to? We're like the first ones, which is not a bad thing. We want to be the first ones. That's actually really good for us. But for the founders, you need to get reps in, you know, get like, talk to as many as you can, stack it, because it's going to give you conviction, right? And again, VC, we can't pick like, if we could predict the future, we'd all be rich. It's just not,
Yeah, of course.
People are wrong all the time, right? It doesn't mean we're right. And it doesn't mean it's you. It could just not fit certain people's thesis and stuff, etc. But yeah, I would definitely, I think people just don't have a structured approach to fundraising, right? Like one thing that I knew, right? Like particularly for like underrepresented founders, and I'm just to be quite frank, right? They were always kind of fundraising, you know? I never heard a defined start and stop,
Hmm.
So what do I
Yeah,
tell underrepresented groups now? Have a start and stop time frame and give it that full measure. It's kind of like these rolling raises
I
but it's
know.
like,
Yeah.
I don't think it conveys confidence and like conviction. And then even for you as a founder, like fundraising is hard. Like it's mentally draining. The cognitive load it takes on you is hard enough to fundraise, focus on customers, grow your team, and oh, by the way, your whole personal life and stuff, etc. So you need to owe it to yourself to like sequencing stuff and prioritizing stuff and like, having a Excel spreadsheet with your notes and your hit list. You need to treat it serious, not just like a pie in the sky thing, because otherwise it's a distraction.
Yeah. I've heard some other good advice where people think of, these founders go into the fundraising process thinking about it as something they just need to get through, get over it. Like fundraise quickly so you can go back to building it. And I see founders oftentimes, if they don't have, to your point, like almost take it seriously, treat it as something your full effort, start and end time, it'll just consume you and then it'll never end. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen at all. Last bit on the getting in the room, is there any value in your opinion of having like reaching out to founders? A lot of the advice they get is like getting founders in the portfolio or warm introductions or anything there. Maybe a quick little tidbit on whether you think that's critical. Do founders need to do that? Are you guys reading cold pitches that are coming in? How should founders think about warm introductions?
Okay, let's reverse engineer this for a sec, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm a opt for this. I can tell you at context, we're always looking for the best deals. That's it. We just want, let's start with that. Best deals. Okay. Where do best deals come from? Right? All over the place. Our inbound, people that go to our website and stuff. Maybe we're hunting them. You know what I mean? People that come to our events and stuff, etc. You want to reverse engineer because most VCs, I would assume that all of them want the best deals,
Yeah,
right?
of
They want
course.
to support the best founders. So it behooves them to look through things, right? But again, it goes back to like you got to understand the game you're playing. It's like the signaling. How do they know that like, hey, I should take this person serious or not? Right? Like it goes back to your LinkedIn profile, right? Like if you were like 4 times at Meta, Pinterest, and something, etc., and now you're in stealth mode, maybe you can get away with it. Us mere mortals, they want to know if we're all in.
Yep.
So make sure that stuff, and you can get scrappy and whatever, but just make sure that stuff is tight and signals to people that you're all in, right?
Yeah, I like that.
VCs have office hours. You could go to their office hours, right? Kicking up dirt there, talking to other founders in their portfolio. I promise, like, and it's funny too, because when I got brought on with Tim, it was important for me. It was like, I mean, I started poking around, LinkedIn, and I'm not trying to like bash other people, but so much of the content out there was like breaking into VC. And I was like, this is kind of whack. I want to talk about building companies and stuff. Like, is that the end goal? Is to like break in, So like we always think like company building, community building, right? And so it's like, where are the channels that we do that at? So like again, stack every unfair advantage, right? And this is for customers too. I think in an ideal world, people think like, oh, I got so many prospects, right? Like I just got 10 prospects. No, man, you gotta kick up dirt. You gotta talk to like 10 people with a pulse, tell them what you're doing for whom, and then for every 4 or 5 you talk to, they say, I know a guy or I know someone. And then guess what? You track that down. I would do the same thing. I would just put it in people's ear, leverage your existing network, right? Start with a tight shot group. So if like, let's say you went to a school or you're part of an affinity group who are and VCs within that space that you could potentially get a conversation with, or people that work in the field that you can shake to get access to someone you can get a conversation with. So you just got to talk to a lot of people. And I think, again, you drastically underestimate how many people you need to talk to. One of our portfolio companies that just closed its seed, because like we come in at the pre-seed level, and obviously a lot of founders have aspirations of raising these giant, seed rounds. But sometimes, right, like when you're unproven a bit, you got to raise that pre-seed, build a little product, get a little traction, then you get those favorable seed round terms. But even those, they were like, man, I talked to 150, 200 VCs, they'll tell you, and they track it like on spreadsheets with notes. And so again, just understand at a high level, at a tactical level, like what it takes to actually make it happen. I think sometimes we do a disservice to entrepreneurs by just not by speaking from pie in the sky, versus a lot of times people need to know tactical. No, get a spreadsheet, fill it in with 200 names, notes, follow-up dates, etc., and like freaking work it.
Yep. I love that. That's all good advice to get into the room. Now let's move to the next phase of actually being in the room. You as a VC, you're going into these meetings. What are the things that you are looking for? You hinted at some of them earlier. What are some of the things that you as a VC are looking for in those initial meetings that founders can make sure that they index on if they're talking to you specifically, but also maybe across the whole VC landscape?
I think again, going back, because I'm a venture partner with context. I know our investment thesis, right? I know what valuations like. Well, not
Yeah,
a good fit.
exactly. Yeah.
So understanding that, and I'm also trying to run screening for our GP because I don't want to
Yeah.
waste his time, and I know what he's looking for.
Yep.
So that's what I would say too, is like, know what the investment committee, depending on like what firms you're going after, what are they looking for? How many deals can they cut a year, right? Like, those things matter too, because like, again, that guides to like decision. So I'm looking for, number one is, we're industry agnostic, but let's be hard. Certain categories are like playing entrepreneurship on hard mode, you know? So if you're doing like CPG and, you better be excellent, you know? Because then I can be like, okay, there might be something here. But if like you're a first time founder and you're going after one of these really, really hard categories that you have no background in whatsoever, that's probably a little bit of a harder sell for the most part.
Yep. Yeah, for
I
sure.
also think, again, it's just the basics. How much you looking to raise? When are you looking to close? Right? Tentative valuation, right? Like these things that like just make it easier for us to kind of pass up. So I'm looking for, what industries we we kind of shy away from, what spaces we do, what kind of fire us up. The founder, right? Like, are they serious? Can I go back and look? There's a story match like that. And it's like, are they the ones to solve this problem? Why does this make sense for them? Another question I asked to me personally is why now?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of disruption going on across the board, and certain business models have been tried before, but for whatever reason, they weren't successful. What changed? What shifted? Right? Why does this opportunity present itself now? The other thing I'm always looking for is like validation. What any kind of demand signal do you have? Now I know it's hard to precede at times where you haven't built a product yet, right? But let's say you worked in industry and you saw the budgets going to X, Y, and Z, right? Like that matters. And so it's like, you know, I think like at the end of the day, it's freaking hard. Like you gotta understand, if you're looking to raise venture capital, you're basically jumping into like the professional sports league.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not doing amateur, I'm not
It's
doing
not amateur
college, I'm going
anymore.
straight NFL, right? And the way these portfolios make money is we got to take a lot of small bets, and hope that like two or three get through the void and return the whole fund, right? Because we know how hard it is. So just understand that if people are going to be taking a risk on you, right? They want to know you got it. Like you got doesn't mean we're right, but just be like, he's got it. You know, what gives that? What conveys that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, you kind of hit on it. One of the other questions was, what is a characteristic, like a founder trait that you look at? And it is kind of that. It's this sense of confidence without being cocky. Like you have this spark or like whatever. It's like that energy that you can't really explain. Like any other points, I guess, from like the characteristic or trait that you've seen founders have that end up going all the way?
I think the X factor, right? Like we said,
You
just the
mentioned
X factor.
X-Men.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you, people are one, and even as entrepreneurs, Matt, you and I could joke about this. We can tell they ain't got it. That invoice didn't get paid. Now they're ruffled and they're running around, right? Like you see where I'm at. We work co-working space head down. I got all the podcast equipment, but I told you, I said, hey, I was in it. So just making sure that you're like, because entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people, it sounds good. Like you see the panels and you see television, it's work, man. You're moving
Oh, yeah.
dirt every day. It's like
Yes.
it's like walking around with a bloody nose 99% of the time. Occasionally you get your, wipe your blood, but then it starts dripping again. So people just want to know, like, are you in it? When I talk to Tim about some of our portfolio companies that are doing really well, they're just like, just consistent, just
Yep.
consistent,
Yep.
they
They
like,
move
they
dirt
just
every day.
move dirt every day, like very polished, like good on the follow up, good on the sense of urgency. It's just like the basics. Like they've gotten really good at like the blocking and tackling. I think one of the challenges now is so many people are used to talking, like talking fast, yada yada, but it's like, can you execute? Have you proven you can execute? Do you have a track record of execution? You know? Because again, if you take VC money, here's another example, right? They're gonna probably want to be a board observer. Guess what? Every time you do your check-ins, you know, or you even your one-on-ones, right? Just kind of checking in meetings, it's like, are you making progress or not? Did we get to what we said we were gonna do? If not, what have we adjusted? What have we shifted? I think those things matter, and it's just like ability to execute. And at the end of the day, the market gets a choice though. Like that's the other aspect, right? You can execute, but if it ain't there, it ain't there. But still, like I think we just want to feel confident that like you were the right one to bet on.
Yeah. And however you can show that. Is the opposite of that a red flag, or what are some red flag characteristics or traits that you've seen now multiple times and you're like, yeah, we can't do it because you're seeing those red flags?
All right, I'm gonna give y'all some inside baseball.
There we go.
I'm using inside baseball because it's like a catch 22, right? I'm gonna say this: the best founders don't need help. Give them the
It's
football,
true.
run it. They execute it.
Yeah.
And we don't like to bother. We don't like to bother people because we know they're out there like executing. But let's say you do need a little help. You probably need to be coachable.
Mm. It's a term I haven't heard. That's so true though. They're absolutely
Yeah.
right. If
Like,
you're
and
looking to be
again,
coached, you need to be coachable. Yeah.
you need to be coachable. If you're not coachable, you know, that's like a double whammy. Not only do you need help, but now you're not coachable,
Yeah.
right? And again, at the end of the day, points on the scoreboard matter. You could be not coachable and still win at the end of the day. And then we're all up there like, celebrating you and talking about how amazing and stuff you are. But again, for us mere mortals, right, that see founders running off cliffs all day, every day, it's like, be coachable. If you get feedback, can you adjust fire? But then at the same time, it's like, can you make decisions from a place of conviction, but also deliver? My mentor, Chris Lockhead, he's got a great quote. I'm about to steal it. Results don't equal no results plus an excuse.
Wow, that's great.
That's a great quote, ain't it?
Yeah, I feel
You
like today
know,
you've dropped so many of those. I want a shirt that has like all these different things where I have to listen back and have all the different quotes on here.
man, this is from people around me. Tim,
Yeah,
another quote Tim says is success is a lagging indicator. If you
it's
focus
true.
on the right inputs, the success should come out. But it's like, and I'm learning this too, is like, I talk to Tim about this a lot too, because I feel like in the VC space, there's so much posturing. But at the end of
Oh,
the
yeah,
day, it's points on the scoreboard. Did you get returns or not? That's why a lot of funds are gonna be going away because they didn't get the returns, you know? And so we just got to make sure we're focusing on the right thing. And that's why the founders we back is really the most important thing because they're going to be the ones doing the work. They're going to be the ones in the trenches day to day, and when chaos is going on all around them, right? Can they make a way out of no way? And it's like, it's so hard to figure out if people kind of, you never really know, but is there signal that shows like this person's going to work it? They're going to push through.
make a way out of no way. I love that one too. Last question on this particular topic. Founders were curious if there were questions that they should ask VCs in those initial meetings. I think they get feedback sometimes to ask questions, but then other times they get some pushback or it comes off as rude or anything. Are there questions that you think, not from a VC perspective and like, oh, I'm happy they asked that question, it shows initiative or something, but more, these are questions they should be asking for their own process during the VC or fundraising process? What are some of those questions that you would say founders should be asking VCs in those initial meetings if there's time?
Yeah, I would definitely say like, I'd be interested to know like who I'm trying to get on my cap table. So like what are some of the companies and port codes that they've invested in? Now, obviously you can do your homework ahead of time, maybe look at their website and stuff. But like if you're a good human and you can make conversation, it might be worth it just kind of understanding their perspective and their point of view. Right. As a category guy, I'm big on point of views. Right. So like I'd want to know what their point of view is about the world, or where do they see the world headed, what they're seeing too out there on the venture landscape. I mean, just be human,
Yeah.
I'd also probably be, how much they come in at, like what's their average check size, the same questions, we open with because you don't want to waste your time, but you also don't want to waste their time. So if there's any kind of threads, any insider knowledge that you would want, I would just go ahead and ask it. But remember, depending on who you're talking to, right? Like we got, let's say the first initial call is like 30 minutes, right? We want to kind of, people are busy now, which is why your storytelling needs to be so good because you don't want to bury the lead,
No,
you
true.
know? One thing I have, and I could be wrong. Again, I'm not saying I'm right. I could be wrong. But I was on with a founder today and I was like, he's got a super impressive background. But the thing that he said, right, like the schools he went to, he didn't go to the Stanfords or the Harvards, and then I'm not saying that that stuff matters, but like if we're being honest, like that lets people get a little signal. People are like, oh,
It
you
does.
can walk and chew bubble gum. But this guy had worked at Meta for like 5 years on a very serious project. Where was that in his LinkedIn? All the way at the bottom. I said, hey, put that front and center. You know, that people slide, a lot of founders have the people slide, like at the very end, the team. Maybe bump that up to like that second slide, to kind of set the tone for like, who are you? Why should we care? Okay, you got some signal. And then now we can get into like the rest of the pitch.
Yep. I like it. All right. Next phase is kind of the meat and potatoes of the fundraising process. You've had a lot of these initial meetings. They've gone well. You're now kind of in this weird diligence process. Let's speak specifically on Context VC. What does your diligence process look like when you're in those phases of you like the founder, you like what they're doing, you're moving into that next phase? What does a specific diligence process look like at the pre-seed for you?
So we do have a deal team. And so the deal team will kind of go through and look and we'll have to write up some notes, right? And like make our recommendations to the GP. But again, the GP also will have the final decision. But then also, people want to poke around a little bit, right? So let's say you're a veteran entrepreneur, right? We don't know you. Probably need to pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, hey, what can you tell me about so and so? Or, one of our portfolio companies, I actually served in Afghanistan with him. And he jumped out the internet, DM'd our GP, and he called me. This was before I was a venture partner at Context. This was like in, I want to say like 2023. He called me and said, hey, what can you tell me about this person? I was like, man, he's the best thing since sliced bread. Served with him in Afghanistan. He was my executive officer. I got nothing but positive things to say. He backed him off that conversation.
Hmm.
So what does that tell you? Relationships are super important. How people talk about you when you're not in the room, that's part of the diligence process. The other stuff is coachable, right? Like make sure you got this stuff, yada yada. People can work through that, right? But when people pick up the phone and start calling around and asking, about you and
This is
your
what happens.
reputation,
100% of the time it
it's
happens.
what
Yeah.
happens. It like really does matter. So that's why I always say like be a good human, treat people kind. We had our contact, we had our event this last week. I told a founder like 2 years ago, he came up to me, asked me some questions because I was basically paneled at our events every year, even before being a venture partner. And I just gave him some I was like, sure, how can I be helpful? You know, he didn't know me out the blue. I didn't know him out the blue. I just asked him, like, how can I be helpful? Man, that stuck with him. And he came up to me this year and was like, man, thank you so much. That was so helpful for me. You just making time, you just being hopeful. So, like, that's putting goodwill out. And you never know where it's going to come up. I was just being me. But, like, I have a saying, just don't be an asshole because you never know.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you're planting seeds now. You're building your brand now. Every person you talk to, every work product you put out, you're building your brand that you may not realize you need to eat off of at some point. So just like literally just be a good human, treat people right, and pray that they talk about you how you would like to hope they talk about you when you're not in the room. But it goes back to what do you want to be known for? That's really the thing. What do people know you for?
And we've seen this so many times where we've loved the founder and the meetings all go well and all these things. And then we talk to people that used to work with them and it falls apart. It's like they have nothing but bad things to say. And those deals will fall apart quickly.
100%.
Another question during this phase of the process, founders, I think, are surprised sometimes when they have to start making some selections on who they allow into their round. It feels like a nice problem to have. It oftentimes is a nice problem to have because not every company is going to get to a point where they're, quote unquote, oversubscribed or whatnot. But even if they aren't oversubscribed, they have to make decisions on who they take capital from. It's more important when they are oversubscribed because then you have to say no to some VCs, yes to others. What are some of the things that you would recommend founders index on when they're making selections like this? Is it the type of fund, how much capital they have? Is it, multi-stage? Can they invest in later rounds? What are some of the things that founders need to think about when they're making their own picks on VCs to let into their round?
Oh, this is good. I actually wrote about this in a newsletter this morning.
Oh, I love it. Perfect.
If you're fortunate enough to be oversubscribed,
Yeah.
right? And now you get to turn people away, be very intentional about who you want on your cap table and why.
Yes.
And you need to apply second order thinking because now you get the opportunity to do that, right? So now you're playing chess, you're not checkers, right? You're probably thinking through, like, from a biz dev perspective, who would make the most sense for me to go with? Right? Because maybe they've supported other founders in this space, in this vertical that I'm going to be able to tap into. Who do you want on your board? Because now this is a long-term relationship, right? Remember, you might be with some of these people 10 years, right? That changes things, you know? So you might have people that come in or funds that come in kind of hot and heavy and promise you the world and yada, yada, yada. But like, do they have a track record of this? I'd probably start talking to some founders in the portfolio and get the real inside scoop. Because guess what? If you have customers and design partners, right? A lot of these funds, they're going to want to talk to your customers and design partners. So now you should be willing to do the same thing, talking to portfolio companies to see like, hey, is this a good match? Is this a good fit here? I would also think about like competitive advantages. Like, how can you stack unfair competitive advantages, right? A follow-on investment, super important. What's their relationship? Because imagine you take capital from a VC fund, has a terrible relationship with other VC funds. So what
Yeah.
happens now when you look to raise follow-on investment? you're not taking that serious. These things matter, right? Especially as so many people are kind of jumping in the game now. Really pay attention to like who the GPs are as well, where decisions are coming from. Scrutinize that term sheet to just make sure no funky stuff got thrown in there, kind of at the last minute, things that you don't want. And then also you gotta be, how do I say this? You have to know what you want. So like again, one of our portfolios was very adamant about like ownership, not diluting himself out, and wanting to make sure that like on the board, right, it stayed, where, they main majority control. That was very important to him, right? That what's important to you. So just really think about those second order thinking and just like the long term aspects
Yep.
if you're fortunate enough.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's there's no right or wrong answer either. It just depends obviously on so many different variables, but it can be one of the most important things. This goes back to what I said earlier, where a lot of founders think of it as like, let me just get through the fundraising process. I can't wait till it's over. But these decisions, the VCs you do let into your life this way, but they might be the most important people in your life for the next 10 years. And it can make a huge difference on whether you succeed or fail. But even then, if you don't make it, or if you do, the reputation, all these things, it ties into those VCs that you let in. So it is a very important decision for sure. And I think sometimes founders try to breeze by it or brush by it without thinking as deeply as they should about it.
Yeah. I said it's been super enlightening for me, but these are good. That's a good problem to have,
It is, of
right? That's a
course, it
good
is.
problem to have, to be oversubscribed and stuff, etc. But like, it's just a grind, man. It's hard. That's why it's
Yeah,
good you're doing content like this to help
yeah,
ease the burden on people.
yeah, exactly. All right. The last bit of this is what happens after the fundraise, because I think especially if you're a first time founder, the fundraise process is hard, but then what happens next? So you close the round, everybody's happy and excited. That lasts for maybe like a minute. What are some of the things that you see founders do wrong right after they close their round? What's a common mistake that you see founders make when they've closed their round and the first 3 months, some of those things that they're doing or not doing?
I think again, when I got my boxing gym, I'll never forget the day I got the space, and I just remember that feeling of like, now what? I talked a big game for many years. I was gonna do a gym. I was gonna do a gym. I got a space, had nothing in it. It was completely empty. That was that now what moment. For us at the pre-seed, it's like, okay, get the money, you raise. Now you got to go deliver, right? So now you got to shift from fundraising mode to operator execution mode. And just like again, best founders don't need help. They just need to get it. They need to build, talk to customers. Number one, not talking to enough customers. Tofu, top of funnel, right? Treating like protein. I think the other thing too is, and this was a big theme from our conference, those hires are so important, because now like when you're raise capital, you're a capital allocator. And most of the founders that we serve, right, like you're not just going to be head down building product, right? You're probably going to have to recruit a team to help you build product. Maybe your co-founder can build or whatever, but somebody's got to be shaking hands, kissing babies. What we got to do
Exactly.
now is we got to move like a team.
Yeah.
The best way to get to the Super Bowl is have people that have been there before or
Yeah.
got the potential to be there. If you recruit people into your team that are not meant to be there or not a good fit, it's just going to stall you out. Right. So just like we take small bets as like building things, finding demand signal, etc., you probably should take small bets with hires.
Yeah.
Can you ease people in on like a 90-day, see if they can deliver, et cetera, et cetera? Because again, like a bad hire will like just freaking wreck you.
Yeah, it
I think
does.
the other thing too is like I wrote a note on this yesterday because I was actually talking to Tim about it. And Tim is the GP at Context. Head in the sky, feet on the ground. It's great to have all these aspirations. Oh, we got built it, yeah. You gotta execute. It's like, yeah, okay, this is good. We got this long, like 10-year vision, this new category that's going to change the world. But what are our priorities for the next 30 or 90 days? Can we focus and can we execute? And I think that's a hard thing for all entrepreneurs to do. It's like, how do you focus? Because you're getting pulled from many different directions. Oh man, should I go to this event or I'm gonna go do this? I'm gonna go do this. Like, but I'm big on process, right? Like, what's your process you're doing to execute? And I think sometimes it's like everybody's got good ideas, but it's like, yo, what did we commit to? Did we give it a good run for 30 to 90 days, not just jump from here to here to here and then just moving upstream? But if you're talking to customers, freaking talking to customers will solve a lot of problems. Everybody's trying to scale. Everybody's trying to scale. People don't got one customer. They don't got 10 customers. Get 10 customers, then try to
Hmm.
scale.
Yeah.
But like running around with no customers ain't it.
Yeah, I think people make the mistake of thinking that like, well, but I need to get 100 customers and build something people want. YC was ahead of a lot of this type of feedback, but it's a lot of it is very, very true.
Why do you think that is now? I think we're at the point now where simple advice sounds stupid to people.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like people that know me, I'm like, get 10 customers. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I know it's not rocket science, right? And I know it sounds simple, but ask anybody who's built something from nothing. Those first 10 customers was hand-to-hand combat. It was a knife fight, especially if you're doing enterprise level where the sales cycle is like, freaking forever. And
oh
just
yeah,
people underestimate how hard it is to get 10 customers, the level of uh personal touch you have to have to it. I was reading about the founders of Figma. Man, their first customers, they used to go on site, you
yeah,
know? Why do you think Palantir created the forward deployed engineer? That was just another way of rebranding consultant, somebody to be in the field with them to get people to actually use the product. But I feel like founders, they think they can skip the grunt work. You don't just get to 100 customers. Every great company was built off of one customer at a time. Eventually, you're able to scale it and get lots of them. But like when you're going 0 to 1, you need to manually onboard your customers, and people just think that they don't have to do that.
yeah. And I think that part of it's because you see all the headlines and all these companies that go from like 0 to 100 million in 2 months, and everybody wants to be the exception to that rule. And I went through Y Combinator many years ago now, but the feedback's a lot of the same. Dalton and Michael, I think, built a lot of the core pieces of feedback, and it was all very simple, the same thing over and over again. And I think that the reason we've lost it, to your point earlier, is because it feels as though there are so many companies that are skipping it now, and they're the ones that are getting all the attention. And I think that if you're not doing that, then you're maybe doing something wrong. And so people just like try to go for that. The shortcut is the only way. If the shortcut's not working, you got to find a new shortcut or something like that.
Yeah, I literally watched that video. Michael Siebel from Y Combinator, his video on your first 10 customers, like over and over again. I
Yeah,
send it to people. I
I would
check.
argue he is the single smartest startup mind in the world. He was
Yeah.
our batch mentor, like the one that we got to work with, and I felt so lucky that we got to do that. He's the king of feedback and advice, and we would sit in the same room with dozens of other companies, and he would just give the same advice to like every single one. It doesn't matter what industry, doesn't matter what level or stage, the advice is the same for every company.
Yeah. Early on, I had an advisor and I just couldn't understand his advice. He's like, because he came from the cold calling days. Like, that's how
Wow,
you
yeah.
got customers. You picked up the phone, you call 50 people. He would just tell me, talk to 100 people. I'm like,
Hmm.
what? I couldn't conceptualize it. Now I get it. And I just made it easier for first time founders. I'm just like, get 10 customers, right? Like, that's the proving ground. But like, yeah, Michael Siebel's great. And this advice, I think it sounds offensive because you're like, I got 500,000, I got 1.5, I
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
I can get 10 customers. You don't have them because you're not talking to enough people.
yeah.
Go get them. And it's just, we can pontificate on this for days, but I'm going to write an essay about it.
There you go. I love that. All right, the grand scheme of things, people are trying to build successful companies, but the vast majority of them do not make it. One of the most common or popular questions that we got from founders was, what are the more common ways that you see companies fail? And most of them don't make it to, seed series A. So in those early stages, what are things that you would recommend founders keep an eye out for? Because it ends up being the thing that leads to them failing.
Again, I'm a preface. None of us could predict the future because if we could, we'd all be rich. And it doesn't mean that we're right. But there's a book called The Myth of the Idea by Newton M. Campos. And in it, he
Yeah.
talks about how, we're in this, everybody thinks about founders and they just came up with this great idea and then they just willed it into existence. For like 99% of people, that doesn't work. The rest of us have to have some deep industry experience, some unfair advantage, right? So that way, as we come up against roadblocks, you can work your way around it, right? It's why, like, let's say you don't come from a fintech background. You didn't work in finance. You got no relationships in Bank of America or across the board. And then now you're trying to build something in the space. Guess what? You just chose entrepreneurship on hard mode, right? Because now when you wake up to go to market after that 5K check and you get ready to pick up the phone to call people, who are you calling? You don't have those relationships. You don't have those networks you can leverage, right? So that's an example of not having founder product fit. I think the other thing is, and I'm bullish on this, is category, right? So Matt, if you and I say we're going to start a print newspaper for, our local hometown this week, probably challenging, right? Category collapse on top of itself. Good example is narrative podcasting. If we said, hey, we want to raise $10 million for our narrative podcast company, good luck, right? The Gimlet Medias of the world and a lot of those companies that were around, up until like 2022, 2023, they're no longer there. That category collapsed. It's not growing as fast as people thought, right? So it's just bad positioning. You want to position for opportunities that are going to be around 10 years from now. Spaces that are growing. Where's funding flowing, right? Obviously, like with Harpoon, there's a lot of attention being given on defense tech across the board, right? What does that signal? Category growth, right? JP Morgan investing 1.5, don't, 1.5 trillion. There's a lot of money going in the category, right? That's growth, which is why you're seeing more conferences pop up and stuff, etc. Where are you seeing conferences close down? You know, hey guys, no more, we can't afford, and just learning how to read the room. Good example too is alcohol consumption is going down across the board, right? People are Gen Z, like 56% of Gen Z are like not drinking alcohol or something. Okay. Doesn't mean that there's not opportunity there. It just means, is it the hockey stick growth from before? You see a lot of craft breweries closing down, distilleries closing. That's a signal of like a category collapsing. So what you want to do is like, you want to catch waves. Like, where's the future headed? And a lot of times that's packaged in new emerging categories. LLMs, prompt engineering, autonomy this, autonomy that, stuff that didn't exist 2 years ago, right? Now it's got money flowing into it. And so just understand, like, and there's a book called Play Bigger, how pirates, dreamers create and dominate categories. It's like, it will change the way you think. But I always try to think about how am I positioning myself to catch a wave, not, being stuck in just still water.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Mike, that was a lot of valuable information. I'm super excited for founders to listen into this. Any last piece of information that you want to leave founders with that maybe we didn't cover today?
No, I just make sure if you want to raise venture capital that it's the right fit for you. Uh, I think again, entrepreneurship has kind of been hijacked in a way, but at the end of the day, man, people have been building some from nothing forever. There's some very successful entrepreneurs that have bootstrap businesses. And I'm not saying that like bootstrapping is a say all end all, right? Because there's pros and cons with it, of course. But like, get as far as you can, using some of these tools and stuff that exist today that didn't exist, years ago. I mean, you can run MVPs, you can get landing pages up. I mean, look at Matt. Matt, you got content, you got stuff for days, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that would have been hard. That would have been,
Impossible.
thousands
Sure.
upon thousands of dollars, 10 years ago. Back in the day, you used to hire a web developer who would build you a website. Good luck getting a hold of him to make updates and stuff. Versus now you can hire him to create the shell or the skeleton, and then you can go in and like update yourself. So definitely think about, for the underdogs and misfits out there, and you know who you are because you probably self-identify as one. We need to be excellent at the basics, blocking and tackling, finding demand, validating demand with paying customers, spending our time, focus on the right things. If we have gaps, find mentors, read books and stuff, etc. But be committed to winning, not just playing to compete, right? Because like you don't get this time back. So if you're gonna spend time doing this, right, you owe it to yourself to treat it like a professional.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Where can people find out anything more about you? Anything you want to point people to that we can put in show notes or anything for people to learn more about you, Context VC, and so forth?
Yeah, we're always looking for the best founders. Feel free to visit our website, contextvc.com, and pitch us. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Iron Mike Steadman. I also have a website, ironmikesteadman.com. But no, I just appreciate you guys putting this educational content out there. I think it's super helpful. And it's also helpful for me to spar with someone around what I'm seeing and share those lessons learned as well.
No, love it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.
Pitch pass, iterated fast. Story beats data when the storyline's vast. Vision's the ignition, but the numbers steer the ride. Conviction and precision, watch investors collide.